Hey guys, it's Alexandra from iloveknots.com. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a beanie worked with the classic granny stitch pattern. I'm going to be using Swish worsted weight yarn. This is 100% merino wool, one of my favorite yarns to work with. This yarn is soft, it's cozy, it's not itchy, which is a big plus, and it's nice and durable. A similar yarn to this is Lion Brand Wool Ease. If you can't do wool, Lion Brand Heartland or WeCrochet Brava or Red Heart Soft is what I would recommend. I'm using an H8 5mm crochet hook. You're going to need whatever hook size you need to meet gauge. We're going to go over gauge after round 4, so you may need to go up or down a hook size depending on how your gauge comes out. And you're also going to need a soft tape measure so you can take gauge and check the final length of your beanie. Let's get started. To begin, we're going to start with a slip knot. So this is the working yarn for my tail. I have the short end over my fingers here. Wrap it around my index finger 2 times. Then I hold the tension with my thumb and middle finger. Pick up the loop on the left side of my finger. Pull it up over the other loop but not off my finger. Grab the loop that's on the left now, pull it up over the other loop and off my finger. Then I'll insert my crochet hook right into the center where my finger is. I'll hold the working yarn with my right hand and pull the short tail end just to tighten to normal tension, and we're ready to start. We're going to start with a chain 4. To chain, we just yarn over the hook and pull through the loop. Yarn over and pull through. Yarn over, pull through. There's 3, here's 4. Now we're going to slip stitch join to form a ring. So we're going to go into that very first chain you worked right down the center of it. Insert your hook. Yarn over, pull through that loop and the loop that's on your hook. And now we have a ring that we're going to be working into. Right there on the top, it also looks like there's a little ring. That is where we just slip stitch join to, and that chain will open up as you work because this tail end is not secured. Just don't work your stitches into that hole. We're working into the center hole. As we work, we're going to keep our tail end held against our chains, and we will crochet over it. So I'll just hold it like this with my thumb and my middle finger, and I'll crochet on over that. To begin, we're going to chain 2. In the crown, which is the first half of the beanie, the flat circle, this chain 2 is not going to count as a stitch. We're going to start with 10 double crochets into that very center ring. To double crochet, we're going to yarn over our hook, insert it right into the center ring, yarn over and pull through. We have 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Let's work one more together. Yarn over, insert your hook into the center ring, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. This beginning chain 2 is not going to count as a stitch, so we have 1, 2 double crochets. And you actually count them with the V-shaped stitches that you see on the top. There's 2 there. Keep working until you have 10 double crochets all worked into that center ring, and don't forget to hold your tail end against your chain so you can crochet over it. I just finished working 10 double crochets. We're going to slip stitch join to the very first double crochet, which is right here. But if you're not sure where to join to, you can count backwards using these V-shaped stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Insert your hook into that stitch, picking up both loops. Yarn over your hook, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on your hook. That is a slip stitch join. We're going to be doing that at the end of every round. That beginning hole, you can hold the fabric with your right hand and pull on the short end with your left. It'll close that hole up. We're going to secure this closed when we weave in our ends later. For the first half of our beanie, we're going to be increasing. That means that we are going to be adding stitches, so each round will have more stitches in it than the previous one. This is going to give us a large circle that also lays flat. I work my increases a little bit differently than what you might be used to, and that is to help me keep my seam straight. Typically what you would do is you would work 2 stitches into this first stitch, 2 stitches into the next stitch, or 2 stitches into the first stitch, 1 stitch into the next stitch. I take that beginning increase and I split it in half. I work the first stitch as normal and all the other stitches as normal, and then after I'm finished, I would finish over here for this round. I work 1 more stitch into that first stitch to complete the first set of increases. Then I slip stitch join. The first stitch is going to come out to the left of the beginning chain, and the second stitch from that first increase will come out to the right of the beginning chain. This is going to keep your seam straight the whole time you're working this crown. So for round 2, I'm going to chain 2. Then I'll work my first double crochet into that first stitch. And our repeat for this is 2 double crochets into each stitch around. So 2 double crochets into the next stitch. 2 double crochets into the stitch after that, and continue all the way around. Then after we work our last set of increases over here, we'll work 1 more stitch into that first stitch to complete the first set of increases, and we'll slip stitch join. At the end of this round, we're going to have 20 double crochets. Alright, so I just worked the last set of increases. I need 1 more stitch to complete my round. I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to insert my hook right into the stitch that is underneath the beginning chain. Yarn over, pull through, and complete my double crochet. This is going to be the second stitch from our first increase. So we have our beginning chain right there in the center. Then we have our first double crochet over here on the left, and now we have this double crochet here on the right. Now I want to insert my hook into the first double crochet and complete a slip stitch. Round 2 is finished with 20 double crochets. For round 3, chain 2, 1 double crochet into this first stitch, and we'll work the second half of that increase at the end. 1 double crochet into the next stitch. Our repeat for this round, 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 1 double crochet into the next stitch. You'll continue working all the way around, 2 double crochets in the next stitch, 1 double crochet in the next stitch. Once we're at the end, we'll work 1 final stitch into that first stitch and slip stitch join. This round is going to have 30 double crochets. So I've just worked the last stitch of my last repeat. I need to work one more stitch to complete this round, and I'm going to do it right into the stitch that the beginning chain 2 is coming out of. Then I'll insert my hook into the first double crochet and complete a slip stitch. Now round 3 is complete with 30 double crochets. For round 4 we're going to chain 2, double crochet into the first stitch, and we'll work the second half of that increase at the end. 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And now our repeat begins. 2 double crochets into the next stitch, double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Continue working all the way around. 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Once we finish our last set of increases over here, we'll work 1 more stitch into the first stitch and slip stitch join. This round is going to have 40 double crochets. I just worked the final stitch of my last increase. I need to work 1 more stitch into the first stitch. That completes my first set of increases, and now I'm going to slip stitch join to the first double crochet. Round 4 is complete with 40 double crochets. We're going to stop here and take our gauge. Gauge is measured across the center of a circle. That is the diameter of the circle, directly across the center, starting at the left on the left edge, ending on the right edge. Grab your soft tape measure, measure across, and it should be either 3 3/4 inches or 3 7/8 inches across. If your diameter is measuring smaller than that, then you need to switch to a larger crochet hook. If your diameter is measuring larger than that, then you need to switch to a smaller crochet hook, rework the first 4 rounds, and take gauge again. If you continue and your beanie is not measuring the correct gauge, the finished beanie is either going to be too small or too big. For row 5, we're going to chain 2. I'll work 1 double crochet into the first stitch here, work the second half of that increase at the end, and I'll work 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Our repeat begins here, 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Continue working all the way around, 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Once you're at the end here, we'll work 1 final stitch in the first one and slip stitch join. This round is going to have 50 double crochets. Alright, I just worked the last stitch of my last repeat here. One more stitch into the first stitch. Then I'll slip stitch join. Round 5 is complete with 50 double crochets. For our 3 to 6 month hat, this is the stopping point. We're no longer going to be increasing after this. The diameter measured directly across the circle should be about 4 5/8 or a little bit more, 4 11/16. The granny stitch pattern is worked in a multiple of 3. Right now we have 50 double crochets, which is not divisible by 3. So we need to increase to 51 double crochets. We're going to do that here in the first stitch. So we're going to chain 2 as normal, and we'll just work 1 double crochet into the first stitch. In the crown, the beginning chain 2 did not count as a stitch. Here in the body, the chain 2 does count as a stitch. So right now we have 2 double crochets. Now we're just going to work 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way around. At the end of this round, we're going to have 51 double crochets, including this beginning chain 2, and then we'll slip stitch join. I just worked the last stitch. Here I now have 51 double crochets. We have been joining to the first double crochet and not the chain, but in this round we're going to go ahead and insert our hook right into the top of that beginning chain. So there's 1 chain, 2 chains, right into the center of that chain, insert your hook, and complete your slip stitch. Oops. That way we have the extra space in the end for the granny stitch pattern. Round 6 is finished. Now we are going to begin our granny stitch pattern. We're going to chain 2. Remember, this counts as a double crochet here in the body. So that will be the first double crochet of our first cluster. And we'll work 2 double crochets right into that same stitch that we slip stitched to. Now we'll skip the next 2 stitches and work 3 double crochets into the next stitch. Skip the next 2 stitches, 3 double crochets into the next stitch. Continue working all the way around, skip 2 stitches, 3 double crochets into the next stitch. At the end, you'll work your last cluster over here. You'll have stitches unworked that will match the same pattern, and then we'll slip stitch join. I just worked my last cluster. I have 2 stitches left unworked, and I'm going to slip stitch join to the first double crochet. To begin the next round, and for each round after this, you're going to slip stitch over into the next double crochet, then slip stitch into the space. Not into the next double crochet, but into the space created that's between the clusters, into the space, into your hook, and complete a slip stitch. Then we'll start with a chain 2, and we'll work 2 double crochets into that same space. Then we'll skip the clusters and we'll work 3 double crochets into the next space in between the clusters. Skip the next cluster, 3 double crochets into the space in between the next 2 clusters. And continue working into the spaces in between clusters all the way around. You'll work your last cluster over here in this space, and then you'll slip stitch join. There's my last granny stitch cluster. Insert my hook into the first double crochet and slip stitch. You could slip stitch into the top of the chain, but I just think it's easier to slip stitch into the first double crochet. The only time I slip stitch into the chain is if I'm going to end it with like a single crochet edging. Keep in mind as you work, if you are a tight crocheter and this is starting to bunch up, you may want to go up a hook size just for the granny stitch pattern so that it stays looser. To start the next round, you'll just slip stitch into the next double crochet, then slip stitch into the space in between the clusters. Chain 2, 2 double crochets into that space. Each round is worked exactly the same as this. Slip stitch over into the space, chain 2, 2 double crochets into that space, 3 double crochets into each space all the way around. After you work for a little bit, take your tape measure out, measure from the top of the beanie all the way down. I like to add a round or 2 of single crochet onto the bottom to give it a clean edge. So I will leave room for that. 1 round of single crochet adds about 1/4 of an inch, so I'm going to keep that in mind as I work. For a 3 to 6 month size, you want a total length of 5 1/4 or 5 3/8 inches. I'm going to go ahead and work off camera, and then I'll come back and tell you how many rounds I've worked. Alright, for my 3 to 6 month size beanie, I have worked 11 rounds in total, and my beanie is currently measuring 5 inches. I want it to be around 5 1/4, 5 3/8, so I'm going to go ahead and work a round of single crochet just to give it a finished edge. If you work another round of granny stitch, the beanie will be 5 3/8 inches tall. I like the polished look of a round of single crochet, and to give it a little bit of structure, but it's not necessary. So if you like the look of the granny stitch pattern, go ahead and just add on one more round of granny stitch. I'm going to show you how to do a round of single crochet. So what I want to make sure I do is that I work into the top of the beginning chain 2. So I just took out the where I slip stitched over and my slip stitch. I'm going to take it back down to the last stitch of my last cluster, insert my hook into the top chain. So there's 1 chain, 2 chains, insert right into the center and complete a slip stitch. Because this beginning chain 2 counts as a stitch, and I need 51 stitches in total, so I have to also work into that chain as well. Chain 1, insert your hook back into the center of that top chain, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops are on our hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. That is a single crochet. We're going to be single crocheting into each stitch around. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both loops. We don't work into the space, we work into the stitches. And we'll just continue working all the way around. After we work our final stitch over here, then we'll slip stitch join. I just worked my last single crochet of the round. Insert my hook into the first single crochet and slip stitch join. And now my little beanie measures 5 1/4 inches tall. The only thing left is going to be to fasten off my ends and weave them in. I'm going to add a clip here showing how I weave them in on a larger size beanie that I'm going to make. Fasten it off. I'll pull up on that loop to break it. Then I'll take my crochet hook, I'll insert it into the same stitch that I slip stitched from the wrong side to the right side and pull that yarn tail through to the wrong side. So it's in a better position for me to weave it in. Then I'm going to turn my hat inside out. This is the wrong side of the beanie, the inside. We'll take our tail end here and thread it into our tapestry needle. When I weave in my ends, I'm going to do it here, I'm going to do it vertically, up and down. I'm not going to weave in horizontally because it restricts the amount of stretch in those stitches. So I am going to insert my needle into a nearby stitch. When I pick it up, the first stitch, I don't pick up the whole stitch. This is picking up the whole first stitch. I'm going to insert my needle into the center of that stitch, breaking it in half, and that is going to catch my yarn. Then I'll just weave under several stitches here. And when I come out, I also break that stitch in half. This helps to catch the yarn so that you don't have to worry about your ends coming out later. And as I pull, I just want to make sure that it doesn't distort the shaping here, so I'm just using my fingers to Make sure it lays flat the way I want it to. That's the first pass. I'm going to go into a nearby stitch now. I always break in half the stitch in the beginning and at the end. So I'm going into a nearby stitch, and then I'm going to work down through the same stitches that I just worked into. That's pass number 2. I always do 3 passes. That's my magic number. So I'm going into another nearby stitch down here, working upwards through those stitches I just finished working into. And now I am happy with this. I'm ready to weave in my ends. I'm ready to fasten it off. If you feel like this is a little bit loose, work a 4th pass. As long as you feel comfortable with it, that your stitches aren't going to come out. That's why I like to make sure I break the stitches. This is the initial tail of the hat from the top. Thread that into my needle there. I'm going to, I'm inserting my hand into the hat so that I can keep all the fabric in my hand and control it so I can reach it better. We're going to work clockwise underneath all those stitches until we get back to the beginning. Now that I'm back to the beginning, I'm going to insert my needle under a few more stitches just so I go a little bit past it. And then I'm going to hold the fabric and give it a pull to make sure that that hole is tightened closed. Now I'm going to insert my needle into a nearby stitch, and I'm going to work upwards through several stitches. That counts as my 2nd pass. And now I'm going to come back down through a nearby stitch, working under several stitches that I already have worked through. And just give it a tug, and now I can fasten that off. Turn my hat back to the right side. Find the written pattern for this adorable 3 to 6 month size baby hat at iloveknots.com. Thanks so much for watching. Please smash that like button and hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.